Good afternoon, and thank you for attending the webinar, Best Practices for Securing Criminal Justice Information in the Cloud. My name is David Heineman, and I'm the CEO of CJIS Group. CJIS Group provides market intelligence to government IT executives and IT vendors regarding the use of information technology in state and local government agencies. Our roots are in law enforcement technology. We're founded 20 years ago by P.J. Doyle, the former head of IT for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Today, we not only cover law enforcement and public safety, we cover the planning, procurement, and award of technology contracts in all state and local government agencies. Our co-sponsor today is Amazon Web Services. Amazon is the leading provider of cloud services in the world for state and local government and for law enforcement agencies in the United States. Today's webinar is designed to give law enforcement executives and vendors serving that community a clear picture of the issues related to moving law enforcement applications to the cloud or a hybrid environment. We'll also show you how AWS has put in place the processes, technologies, and security safeguards to enable you to smoothly transition to a low-cost, low-overhead cloud environment for your applications handling criminal justice information. In addition, we'll also have a representative of the Annapolis Police Department share his experience in making the transition to the cloud. First, a couple of housekeeping matters. All attendees are muted. If you have any questions, please submit them via the dialog box available on your screen. We will allow 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the presentation to answer some of the questions, and we'll follow up with you all individually to respond to questions that we don't get the chance to answer during the webinar. Second, a recording of the webinar and a copy of the presentation will be available on the CJIS Group website at CJISGroup.com after the webinar is complete. At CJIS Group, we're tracking over 250 active law enforcement related projects that are cloud related. Some are in the planning stage, some in RFP, and others that have been awarded and implemented. These projects run the gamut from storage for body-worn camera video data, various types of records management systems, digital evidence management, all the way to computer-aided dispatch, among many others. AWS, Amazon Web Services, has been very active in helping agencies and vendors securely enable and implement cloud-based law enforcement applications. We are happy to have two senior representatives from AWS that will take us through the cloud and shed some light on securing criminal data in the cloud. And we also have one representative from law enforcement that will speak about his experience moving to the cloud. Our first speaker is Gerard Gallant. Gerard is the Criminal Justice Information Services Senior Program Manager at Amazon Web Services. He is responsible for ensuring that application technology partners have the tools and knowledge necessary to ensure compliance to the CJIS Security Policy. Gerard has spent the last 30 years helping customers solve business problems with technology and ensuring they remain customers for life. He's held roles in all stages of the application lifecycle, including sales, marketing, product management, product engineering, system implementation, data security and privacy, customer support, and product service quality with vendors such as KPMG, HP EDS, Oracle, and Motorola. Our second speaker is Patrick Woods. Patrick is a security assurance lead for AWS and works with public sector customers to realize the potential to move workloads to the AWS Cloud and improve both their security and compliance postures in the process. Patrick has faced IT challenges from both the industry and agency perspective, serving as Chief Information Security Officer and Assistant Division Director of the Cyber Security and Technology Section in the Criminal Justice Information Services Division for the Missouri State Highway Patrol, and is Chair for the CJIS APB Cloud Computing Task Force for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Our third speaker is Ricky Truitt. Sergeant Ricky Truitt is a nearly 20-year veteran of the Annapolis Police Department, currently serving as the Special Projects Director for the City of Annapolis. Sergeant Truitt specializes in identifying emerging trends in public safety and bringing these projects to fruition within the public sector arena. Sergeant Truitt has partnered with several Fortune 100 companies to identify and implement best practices in public safety technologies, and is a member of many national law enforcement organizations, and has been a featured speaker previously with Gartner on the topic of IP video over cellular. With those introductions, I will turn it over to Gerard, Patrick, and Ricky. Gerard, please go ahead.
Thanks, everybody, for being here. Today, we're going to cover 6 topics in securing criminal justice data in AWS and in the cloud. First topic is we're going to do a brief overview of cloud computing. We're going to talk briefly about the AWS Cloud, and more particular about AWS GovCloud, which is a region that, or 2 regions that allow us to run workloads that require sensitive data. We're going to talk about security being a shared responsibility, how you achieve compliance in AWS GovCloud, and we're going to finish off the presentation with a brief presentation from Sergeant Truitt from Annapolis, Maryland PD, with applications at the edge and how they used AWS GovCloud. Just a brief overview of cloud computing. Cloud computing is defined as the on-demand delivery of IT resources via the internet with pay-as-you-go pricing. Organizations acquire technology such as compute, power, storage, databases on an as-needed basis. Key points here, it's on-demand delivery. You acquire as you need, when you need, and you pay as you go. Unlike traditional infrastructure where you have to predict how much you'll need, when you'll need it, the amount of capacity that you need, you've got to have all that up and running in a data center. So you're really trading, when you go to the cloud, you're trading capital expense for variable expense. And you, instead of having to know how much do you need before you really have any good idea, you use and consume compute and other services in the cloud as you need them and scale them as you need them, which means you're benefiting from the massive economies of scale that cloud computing can give you. And as a result, instead of having capital cost, you're moving that to variable cost, and you're moving that to a lower variable cost than you could achieve on site because of the massive economies of scale that AWS can achieve. And really, the benefits of the cloud come down to you as agencies really focusing on your mission, stop running and maintaining data centers, and increasing the speed by which you can do things. Instead of having to wait for compute and buy storage and go to RFP or through your various vendors, you can, in a matter of minutes, have what you need in the cloud up and running when you need it, and can scale it up or down depending upon when you need that capacity. Behind all of the global infrastructure for AWS, and here's a picture of it, you will see that we have 22 regions across the world. And of those 22 regions, 2 are GovCloud regions, US West and US East, as you see depicted on the map. And there's 69 availability zones across the world. In US West GovCloud and GovCloud East, there are 3 availability zones each. And we're going to go into a little bit about what that means. 187 points of presence across the world. So you have a massive scale of infrastructure. Particular to our topic today in GovCloud, you have 2 regions, each of which have 3 availability zones. And just a little bit about what is an availability zone, because that is a different concept. We design each region. So if you think about our GovCloud regions, we design each region to have multiple availability zones. A region is a physical location in the world. An availability zone consists of one or more discrete data centers, each of which has redundant power, networking, and connectivity. Why is that important? That it's important because that gives you significantly higher availability, scalability, and fault tolerance that's built into when you consume resources in GovCloud East and GovCloud West. That allows the cloud to be able to handle your mission critical data as it is highly available, highly scalable, and highly fault tolerant. The result of that infrastructure and the availability zone concept and our region concept is you really see 5 large benefits of that infrastructure. I mentioned availability, physical redundancy, resiliency, uninterrupted performance is what you get when you design data centers and design your cloud like that. Security is one of our core tenets at AWS. Our systems and data centers are built specifically for the cloud and are designed to meet the most stringent security requirements around the world with 24/7 monitoring. As a customer, what you get is you get to inherit all those benefits of availability and security, scalability, reliability, and performance. You inherit that. And as we're going to talk about in GovCloud, those are tested against the strictest third-party assurance frameworks that are available today. And you get to inherit that goodness, all of that work to use as a part of your program when you migrate your applications and data to the cloud. In GovCloud in particular, you saw that on the map with East and West regions. Our West region was launched in 2011, and our East region was launched a year ago in 2018. It is an isolated infrastructure and services for customers that have very strict regulatory and compliance requirements and sensitive data. You see some of the frameworks below. It addresses the most stringent regulations, policies, and security. Things like CJIS, FBI Criminal Justice Information Services, FIPS compliance, FedRAMP, ITAR, HIPAA. These are some of the compliance programs that are able to be met by using AWS GovCloud. So GovCloud US, like I said, it consists of isolated regions for customer workloads that must meet the regulatory requirements. Data, network, and machine isolation from all other regions. All other regions are separate and distinct from data, network, and machine. As a result, you have an isolated region, and we have service endpoints that are FIPS certified, and a critical component of CJIS security the policy is to be able to encrypt data in transit and be able to ensure you meet FIPS 140-2 compliance. And we provide those endpoints. We're going to talk a little bit more about those a little later on. We have a separate identity and access management controls, a dedicated console, which allows you to manage your systems and manage your services you consume that is separate and distinct from any of our commercial regions. And 2 other comments, it's managed by US persons on US soil, and it is truly a community cloud with vetted account holders. GovCloud US is all about compliance in the cloud. I mentioned earlier, here's a few of the compliance programs that we meet, and some of which are certified programs and some of which are programs that enable you to be compliant, like CJIS as an example, where there is no certification. So like I said, GovCloud, it's a vetted community. The root account holder, meaning the person that applies to the account, must be a US person. That's a US citizen or a green card holder. You must come from a US entity incorporated to do business in the US on US soil. And as part of the ITAR regulations, you must be able to handle export control data. Little link in the bottom, which you'll get when you receive the slides. So I'm going to hand it over to Patrick, and what I just gave you was a brief overview of our cloud, our global infrastructure, and more particularly, some of the compliance programs in the community cloud, in the AWS GovCloud that you inherit as a result of managing applications and consuming services in AWS GovCloud. Patrick will take you a little further into security and shared responsibility.
Thanks, Gerard. So when we think about security at AWS and the benefits that Gerard talked about, one of the core benefits is that you can elevate your own security with the AWS GovCloud. So a few of the things Gerard already hit on, inheriting global security compliance controls, some of which have been shown on screen there, but that's an enormous amount of work that AWS does on your behalf as a customer to ensure that our programs and our services have met those high bar standards in the international community, but also in the US community. And so as Gerard mentioned, security at AWS is our top priority, and it starts with our core infrastructure. So the infrastructure was custom built for the cloud and designed to meet all the most stringent security requirements in the world, and it's monitored 24/7 to ensure the confidentiality and integrity of and availability of our customers' data. So these same world-class security experts who monitor the infrastructure on a daily basis are also the ones that build out and maintain the broad selection of security services, which can help you in turn secure your data. And we're going to talk a little bit about that more in depth as we go along. The other benefits that you gain with the AWS GovCloud is the scale for superior visibility and control over your own data and your own system. So the visibility and the ability to go in and view all of the assets that you have, all of the data that you have at a moment's notice, and not just referencing back to a network diagram that may be out of date. But being able to see what you're trying to protect is incredibly important from a security perspective. And then being able to react quickly and control the access to that data is also very important. With the GovCloud, you also get the highest standards for privacy and data security, and you can automate a lot of the tasks that your security teams would otherwise be doing manually based on that visibility and the logging that we're going to talk about a little bit more in depth. And then the last piece here is that we have the largest network of security partners and solutions. So through our AWS Marketplace, for example, if you're familiar with a security product that you already use on-prem, you can definitely bring that over to the AWS GovCloud and deploy that in a format that your existing IT staff are already comfortable with. So when we talk about security at AWS, we talk about it in terms of the shared responsibility model. And what we do on behalf of the customer is that we provide a protected, secured infrastructure that runs all of the services that are offered through AWS Cloud. The customer, on the other hand, is responsible for everything that happens in the cloud, and we're going to draw that distinction more directly on this next slide. So if you look at the stack there, everything that's in blue, those are the responsibility of AWS to secure. So providing you with secure foundational services from compute, storage, database, and networking, and providing you with a secure global infrastructure that Gerard mentioned. But everything above the line in the orange, those are the things that the customer is ultimately responsible for securing in the cloud. And so when you look at these, we can start to draw a connection back to the CJIS Security Policy. And so that very top layer, for example, customer applications and content, that's where your CJI is going to live, and it's going to be processed. So those are still the customer's responsibility, and we provide you the tools to be successful in protecting this entire stack and complying with all of the strict compliance requirements of CJIS. So we'll talk a little bit more in depth here in a few minutes when we break down the policy and talk about how we approach and how our customers approach meeting those CJIS security policy requirement areas. But another thing that's really important that we hit on is privacy. So it's not just security, but it's also maintaining the privacy over the data. So a couple things to consider here. With AWS Cloud, you control the location of the data at any given point in time. So through that console, you can move the data between regions. So if you wanted to move, for example, from US West to US East GovCloud, you have the ability to do that as a customer. You also have the ability to restrict it. So through policies you can write, you can restrict that the data only resides in one particular region. But the point here is that we allow the customer to meet data residency requirements, including the ones in CJIS that require that the data be maintained within a U.S. data center or in a Canadian data center. So you can definitely meet that requirement on your own. So the encryption at scale, this is really critically important, as we'll demonstrate more in depth later, but we provide the customers with the ability to, at scale, manage their own encryption keys and manage encryption that meets and exceeds the levels required by the FBI CJIS security policy. So we'll demonstrate that in depth and talk about it in just a second. We also allow you to comply with all your local data privacy laws. So by giving you, the customer, the complete control and ownership over your data, you retain that throughout the entire life cycle. So if you have a particular local law that you need to comply with, you control who accesses the content, its life cycle, and its disposal. So things like record retention, how long you're required by your local laws to retain your records, when they need to be purged, how they need to be purged, that's all determined by you and how you architect your solution on AWS. And then we also give you access to services and tools that allow you to build a compliant infrastructure on top of AWS, which is what we're going to talk about extensively through the rest of this presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Gerard for just a second to talk about the ways that our typical customers in the CJIS community are handling criminal justice information on AWS.
So if you look at the types of end users that are handling criminal justice information, there's a wide gamut of users, from state and local public safety agencies, as you would expect, county sheriffs, child protective agencies, courts, probation, state license, state bureaus of identification, jails and prisons. And those data needs are some of the systems that you would see in law enforcement and public safety: records management, CAD, body-worn video and storage, digital evidence management, real-time crime centers, next-gen 911, just a wide variation of data needs that exist inside the public safety arena to help police, law enforcement, and other agencies associated with that to really accomplish their mission. And that goes without saying that a lot of the data that law enforcement uses to be able to really accomplish their mission actually comes from the FBI. And you think of data such as biometric data or identity history, biographic, property, or case incident, critical information that's stored in FBI systems that actually usually starts out in a local agency and then is submitted to the FBI. That data is critical to law enforcement to achieving their mission. And that data is actually provided by the Criminal Justice Information Services Division, which is a division of the FBI, and it houses the largest repository of criminal history records and fingerprints in the world. Systems that we all probably know, such as NCIC and NICS, the gun background check system, and next-gen ident. Those systems are what the FBI, some of the systems the FBI provides to law enforcement to be able to complete their mission. With data comes a lot of responsibility, and that responsibility is documented quite in detail in the Criminal Justice Information Services Security Policy, 5.8, the current version. It is the data privacy and security policy of the FBI CJIS division, and it basically, there's a whole process by which that is modified through a process called the Advisory Policy Board. But that standard, it basically creates policies and requirements for full life cycle of criminal justice information, from creation, viewing, modification, right through destruction. So it's an all-encompassing standard, and everyone is subject to that standard. So it's really important you understand what the standard is and how you can implement it. And we're going to take you through how AWS provides services in our GovCloud regions to help you implement that policy, or software vendors or yourselves as an end law enforcement entity. So I'm going to hand it back over to Patrick, who's going to talk and talk about, you heard him talk about shared responsibility. He's now going to talk about shared responsibility and what that means as an example from a CJIS perspective.
So just responsibility as it relates to AWS customers and the responsibilities of AWS. CJIS implementation is also a shared responsibility under the shared responsibility or the shared management concept in the CJIS security policy. So the responsibility to implement CJIS security policy controls is a joint responsibility between the criminal justice agencies, who we consider to be our end customers, any software vendors who build or create solutions for customers on top of AWS, and AWS ourselves. So examples for this are that agencies configure software solutions, software access controls to restrict access. Software vendors are responsible for implementing password controls in their application so that the agencies can take that next step and configure that secure access. And AWS, for example, provides FIPS 140-2 certified encryption endpoints to allow the vendors and the end customers to meet those strict encryption requirements within CJIS. One distinction with CJIS is that from other regulatory frameworks that we deal with is that there's no centralized independent assessor like there would be for FedRAMP. So the determination of CJIS compliance is really the responsibility of the customers who work with the CJIS data and working with their state and federal officials to work through any questions that they may have about CJIS compliance. So there is no CJIS certification, there's no CJIS stamp of approval, and no independent assessor like we would see with another framework. So the way that we break this down with AWS is the CJIS security policy is broken down into 13 different policy areas. We're going to talk about the 4 policy areas that are most relevant to securing workloads on the cloud. And the way that we approach this really brings the requirements that need to be met in order to secure a workload onto the cloud down to these 4 key areas. So those areas are auditing and accountability, identification and authentication, configuration management, and communications protection and integrity. So the way that we're going to break those down for you is to demonstrate how these controls in AWS GovCloud allow you as the customer to meet each one of these while deployed on the AWS GovCloud. So we're going to talk about, for example, in 5.6, identification and authentication, things like identity and access management, directory services, and Cognito, and how those bring you world-class services to comply with the very specific requirements of CJIS. So jumping right in here to section 5.10, which is communications protection. As defined in the policy, application services and information systems must have the capability to ensure high system integrity through the detection and protection against unauthorized changes in software information. So really this comes down to a few different things. Boundary protection. So no matter if you're deploying in a cloud or on-prem environment, controlling how the data moves from one place to another in a secure manner is extremely important. So the way that we approach this is data in transit. This is really no different than how you would do in an on-prem environment. When the data is in transit outside of the boundary of a physically secure location, as defined by CJIS Security Policy, you have to use 128-bit minimum symmetric FIPS 140-2 certified cryptographic modules. And when you are storing data at rest outside of a physically secure location, as defined by CJIS, you also have to use a minimum of 256-bit symmetric FIPS 197 certified encryption, or you can also use the same 128-bit symmetric FIPS 140-2 compliant encryption for in transit. So those two pieces, encrypting your data in transit and at rest, these are pieces that we really want to empower you as the customer to encrypt your data while in transit and at rest, and manage your own keys. And we'll get to that in more in depth in just a second. Intrusion detection tools are also required within AWS. So you can bring your own. We talked about AWS Marketplace, for example. You can bring your own preferred intrusion detection system, or we also provide intrusion detection tools to meet this requirement as well. Malicious code, spyware, and patching requirements, all of those are going to be the same as if you were deploying on-prem. You're going to be responsible for making sure that those operating systems are protected from malware and patched just like you would to today. And for cloud computing in particular, 5.10 permits the storage of CGI regardless of its encryption status, only within the physical boundaries of a CJIS advisory policy member country, so that would be the US and Canada, or within the legal authority of an APB member agency, again, US and Canada. And the other key component for cloud computing is that CJI metadata is protected and not used for advertising. And this is something that we take very seriously in the AWS GovCloud, allowing the customer to even protect your metadata. So when we dig into 5.10, what's really important is that we understand what 5.10 says about protecting virtualized environments. As many of you know, when you move to the cloud, virtualization is what enables that move and enables the scalability. So virtualized environments are authorized for criminal justice and non-criminal justice activities, provided that you meet these requirements that you can see there on the screen. So isolate the host from the virtual machine. That's inherent to our EC2 compute service. Virtual machines cannot access host file names and firmware. Again, that's built into the security of the EC2 service. Maintain audit logs for VMs and hosts and store the logs outside of the host VM. So Gerard's going to talk about here in a second a little bit about the auditing capabilities on AWS. Physically separate or virtually firewall internet-facing VMs from CGI processing VMs. So again, built into the VPC structure that I'm going to talk about next is the ability to do that. And each VM must be treated as an independent system and secured as independently as possible. And then device drivers that are critical should be contained within the specific VM. All of that is built into the AWS architecture when you begin to build your solution. So the AWS service that is most directly tied to 5.10 is this concept of a virtual private cloud. So essentially this allows you to build your own isolated cloud on top of the AWS GovCloud. And it allows you to logically isolate your workloads from any other workload working on AWS, and allows you to retain complete control over your own content and your data. And so the ways that you secure this is your boundary protection that's talked about in 5.10. So you can secure this through security groups and access control lists, very similar to how you would secure a physical network today. It allows you to be scalable and virtualize that so that you're not spending time racking and stacking physical hardware. You're really defining your own software-defined network and allowing you to get operational much more quickly. We have things like NAT gateways that allow you to do traditional network address translation like you would do on-prem. And then we also allow you to look into the network traffic that's going between your VPCs within your VPC through VPC flow logs and examine those. And then for VPC endpoints, for those services that may reside outside of your VPC, like Amazon S3 or DynamoDB, we provide you with VPC endpoints. And Gerard talked about this earlier. Those are FIPS 140-2 compliant endpoints to allow you to secure your traffic between these services and all of your workloads contained within your VPC. So the next critical piece, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, was encryption on AWS. So the way that we implement encryption, it's transparent encryption on AWS. So it really allows the customer to very easily and at large scale encrypt data across your entire AWS deployment. So we use a two-tiered key hierarchy for customer keys. You have unique symmetric data keys that are used to encrypt data. And the reason that we do this, you can see the graphic there off to the right. Your customer master key is contained in KMS. And that customer master key is then used to create separate data keys for each one of the services that you want to utilize. And so these data keys are unique to that particular service. So for example, if you wanted to encrypt your data in Amazon S3 or an Amazon S3 object, it would make an API call to KMS. It would generate a data key to secure that particular workload. And the reason that we do this is that it keeps your customer master key secure in the FIPS 140-2 validated hardware to meet the CJIS requirements. But it also limits the potential impact of a compromised key. So if one of those data keys were to be compromised by the key being stored in an unsecured area or misconfiguration on the part of the customer, we're really allowing this infrastructure to protect you and limit the blast radius of the impact of that particular compromised data key. It also provides for better performance when encrypting large amounts of data. So rather than using a singular key to encrypt data across your AWS deployment, you're generating those keys in a very quick and scalable way. It also makes it easier to manage a small number of master keys rather than billions of individual data keys. So that two-key hierarchy allows you to do things like key rotation in a much more simplistic fashion. And then the centralized controls and audits of master key activity. So like I said, when S3 would use a key from KMS to encrypt, that call and all calls to access that key are going to be through APIs and will be logged, as Gerard's going to cover in just a second, in CloudTrail. And the other key differentiator with KMS is that it's integrated into a wide variety of AWS services. So key management is difficult. It's difficult for agencies on-prem. That's why we don't see wide adoption of encryption everywhere by agencies in an on-prem deployment. But this integration between all of the services allows you to use the same key management system across a large number of AWS services and manage the keys in a consistent manner. So I talked already a little bit about the FIPS endpoints, but this allows you to connect programmatically between AWS services, but also maintain that FIPS 140-2 compliant encryption in between those endpoints. And it also gives those services like S3 a point of presence within your VPC so that you can secure it as just another endpoint within your VPC. So currently in GovCloud, we have over 75 FIPS 140-2 compliant endpoints within AWS GovCloud. So that's a really important piece when building on AWS GovCloud. So now I'm going to pass it over to Gerard. I referenced this a couple times, but he's going to talk a little bit more in depth about how we approach 5.4, which is auditing and accountability.
Yeah, auditing and accountability, really the net of the CJIS security policy is you have to audit everything, and you have to be able to really audit very detailed permission changes, logon attempts, password changes. You see the list in front of you, and very detailed information related to date, time, event, user, outcome, all time stamped with system clocks, and being able to synchronize those on an annual basis, which of course the cloud does significantly greater than that, and retaining all those logs. That is a lot to audit, lots of data. You basically have to know anything that happens, when it happens, who did it, what service they were using, what computer they were using, etc. AWS brings to bear to help agencies and software vendors. They bring to bear two solutions that we're going to start with: CloudWatch and CloudTrail. Basically, CloudTrail, it's a service that enables you to record activity in your services, store that activity, and most importantly, using CloudWatch, you can act on that activity. So you can understand what happens in your environment at a very granular level. And should you need to act on that, you can act on that automatically through the CloudWatch service. And like I said, CloudWatch collects metrics and logs, it monitors them, and then can act so that you can create automated events so that you are not caught going manually through logs, trying to understand how to react, and bad things are happening without you knowing it. As an example, if you want it, if your rules were strict that you said after 2 logon attempts, I want to lock that account out, you could have CloudWatch watch for that and have CloudTrail look at it and fire an event to allow you to correct that action and take that action should that event happen. So very powerful services that can be integrated into the services you consume. Additionally, we offer 2 additional services that help in auditing accountability for the CJIS security policy: GuardDuty and Trusted Advisor. And GuardDuty is a threat detection service that continuously monitors malicious activity and unauthorized behavior to protect your workloads. And really, it looks at your CloudTrail logs, Patrick referred to your VPC, your virtual private cloud flow logs, DNS logs, continuously monitors and intelligently detects those threats and can take action if you want it to take action. Likewise, Trusted Advisor is another tool that allows you to scan your infrastructure and compare it to best practices, look for security items, and take action and make recommendations based upon what it sees. 2 very valuable services that we offer to assist customers and software partners when building and developing applications to meet the requirements of 5.4. In 5.6, identification and authentication, the policy is all about individual identification of users and really knowing who they are with very specific rules around passwords and, of course, 2-factor or advanced authentication when they're outside a physically secure location. AWS has several services that can bring to bear benefits for meeting the CJIS security policy, the first of which is identity and access management. As an example, that allows you to manage users, security credentials. It allows you to manage roles and permissions, federated users. It can also handle multi-factor authentication, as you see the fob example there. So identity and access management allows you to really manage in a fine-grained manner exactly who has access to your services and what they can do. Likewise, directory service and Cognito are two additional services, and directory service is basically a service if you want to use your existing Microsoft Active Directory on site, you can very quickly deploy or migrate your apps and utilize your existing security infrastructure without having to migrate data, without having to upload, do any of that. You can leverage existing user credentials to enable you to utilize that very, very quickly for what you've already developed. And Cognito is another service that allows you to add user sign-on, sign-up, and access control to web and mobile apps. Very, very, very slick service that allows you to also use social identity if you have applications that's applicable to, SAML identification, and user pools. Services at AWS allow you to really hone in on those requirements and take a lot of the complexity away of the 5.4 auditing and accountability requirements and allow you to get there much faster. Likewise, in 5.7, I'm going to turn it over to Patrick, and he's going to talk a little bit about some of the tools and services we bring to the table for configuration management.
Yeah, so configuration management is something that traditionally agencies on-prem have struggled with because configuration management requires you to know what you have, know the exact configurations, and be able to react to significant events or changes that may be happening in your environment and may cause some vulnerabilities. And so traditionally, this was seen as a network scan that would be done periodically to take an inventory of your resources and to detect anything new, unauthorized that had been added or changed. This would typically take minutes, seconds, minutes to hours to days, even depending on the size of your architecture and the availability of tools. And so one of the ways that we simplify this by moving to the cloud is through a couple of different services that are available to you. And that the first one is AWS Config. And so AWS Config gives you the ability to define what your infrastructure should look like, define what those assets should look like, and how your instances should be configured in order to maintain that compliance and security posture. And so just like Gerard talked about active remediation based on CloudWatch events, you can do the same based on config rules. So if you see something get spun up in the environment that doesn't meet your compliance or your security requirements, you can actually have it automatically remediated and brought into a compliant state or suspended until you get an opportunity to evaluate why it's not in a compliant state. It also gives you a nice instant snapshot of everything running in your environment. And then CloudFormation is the ability to move beyond the individual security administrator, system administrator configuring each individual server and really make your infrastructure driven by code. And so you can configure S3 buckets to be in a similar way. You can configure EC2 deployments to be deployed in a common, consistent way so that you're not reinventing the wheel every time that you need to deploy a new system. So it really brings to bear those added tools from the cloud to allow you to accelerate your development and deployment. So to kind of wrap this up on our side before I pass it over to Sergeant Truitt, I want to demonstrate that all of these tools that we've shown you today allow you to safeguard your criminal justice data in the cloud. It allows you to make that leap to the cloud in a safe way, in a way that you can feel confident in your compliance. So we provide the infrastructure and services for law enforcement agencies and solution providers to meet the CJIS security policy requirements and responsibilities in all 50 states. So although there are different requirements in each state, we feel confident that you can deploy a completely CJIS compliant solution in all 50 states, and we're more than happy to work with customers through that process to get you up and running. One of the reasons that we're confident about this is not only do we align to the requirements of the CJIS security policy, but we also align our solutions and our customers' deployments to the CJIS security, or the FBI CJIS division cloud best practices, which were presented this summer during the Information Security Officer Symposium. And so you can see those on your screen. A few key points that I just want to call out is that FBI CJIS Division recommends the use of a FedRAMP High government community cloud, which is offered to you through AWS GovCloud. It also calls out data must be encrypted in transit and at rest. So we've demonstrated to you the ability to do that through AWS GovCloud today, and that encryption keys must be managed by the law enforcement agency. So AWS KMS is called out as an example there of a way that customers can manage your own keys. We've talked about processing, so secure data while it's in process within your own virtual private cloud so that you retain complete control over your content and ownership over that content. And then Gerard talked a little bit about IAM and how that gives you the ability to enforce least privilege across all account permissions and the rich power that comes along with being able to write those identity access management policies. So now I'm going to pass it over to Sergeant Truitt, who's going to give you an overview of how they were able to successfully deploy into AWS GovCloud and solve some of the challenges that their agency was facing.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be with everybody today. So here in Annapolis, we were really facing a aging infrastructure in our server farm and in our environment here. And we were at the crux where we were deciding whether we were going to basically do a full refresh of all our hardware here, or were we going to look at some of the emerging technologies and move towards the cloud. And clearly the cloud was the preferred solution for that, but we faced a ton of regulatory obstacles and additionally a large amount of infrastructure. So in between us acquiring a new CAD RMS, a new 911 system, and a new mobile system, we were also deploying and upgrading all of our mobile handsets, our cellular phones, our iPads and tablets. And so all of that ecosystem needed to be able to co-locate and be able to do everything. Our users today didn't want to be tied down to a desktop or a laptop. They want to be able to be mobile on their handsets, on their iPads, and doing everything they would be able to do at their desktop. And after a lengthy vetting and a lengthy process, we decided that Amazon Web Services and Amazon WorkSpaces was our best solution. This eliminated a ton of back-end IT support. We had a shrinking budget and an even further shrinking IT staff to ensure compliance with our basic needs, our workstations, our antiviruses, our Windows updates, and all of those things. If we were to automate them and buy third-party resources or just automate them simply using standard best practices in the industry, they were going to cost a significant amount of money. And so what we did was we looked at workspaces and we said, what can we do? Does this meet our needs? And you guys have seen all the connectivity and all the great stuff that Pat and Gerard have showed you guys. And what this allowed us to do is say it didn't matter if the officer was at headquarters, if they were in their car, if they were on a tablet, they were going to get that same user experience. And for us in the mobile world, with cellular and Wi-Fi, and no matter what different third-party services we were running to ensure that connectivity was constant, you were going to have drops and you were going to have losses. And the last thing the user wanted to do, even after adding single sign-on and a whole series of things, was to have to log into a whole series of databases and programs again and again and again. And it really was just leading to a real poor user experience. And every step along the way, we were just cobbling ourselves in this additional system and keeping a legacy system running. And the cost and the transfer of all that, it just lent itself to have Amazon be the best solution. And so we've deployed workspaces to our users here locally, and this allows them to access everything from their NCIC queries for their cars to their RMS, our local records management system, and any of our file sharing for arrest records, pictures, photographs, and anything of that nature. So the the important part of this for us was that the sensitive data not be on the end user device. And that could be as simple as a physical computer in a physical building and behind a locked door, or it could be as mobile as a handset. And as everyone on this call, I'm sure, is well aware, that handset and those iPads, no matter what third party we're overlaying on top of that, not having any data be at rest was huge for us. And then having that data lay behind a secure infrastructure built by Amazon, and the ability, if a threat was detected, in order to take down where the threat came in and then be able to spin back up in a matter of minutes, that data and that subset, while the isolated data is being worked on and looked through, that was huge. Because whether you're a small municipality of 500 or less employees like we are, or you're a huge 10,000 employee metropolitan area, that value is unmeasured. And having all that data be encrypted at rest with workspaces at the environment, and then as it's being streamed and having those direct connects back here to our endpoints, and all of that being encrypted and meeting all the highest standards that it was, just for us to be able to architect all that and even use best practices within the industry, we'd be months, years into that process, and it just didn't make sense when it was already created and available for us and had already been proven through Amazon and CJIS and the feds. Next slide, Gerard. So one of the big things that we took advantage of here at that Amazon has and offers is Amazon AppStream. So I'm sure many government agencies have a ton of legacy programs that run and require a series of complex processes to run and to be elevated and to have a series of dependencies, whether it's SQL or Oracle. And so what we found is using Amazon's AppStream, which allows you to create a custom image of a desktop application and then have that secure application delivered, not stored on the user computer, but yet delivered encrypted to the user's endpoint. This provides a fluid experience for all of our users and those applications. It allows to have that scalability. If I only need 10 or I need 1,000, I don't have to buy any hardware. I don't have to add any resources. All those applications can go out. And then if I need to update that application, I don't need to touch any local computers, any local machines. I simply update my image, relaunch it out, and off those applications go. And you say, well, that sounds like I'm going to have a lot of work and it could be rather cumbersome. This is a process by which anybody could really do. Either following the tutorials provided or working with Amazon's staff to make sure that you have it all and test it. But all the way through, the scalability and the ability to have these applications reach back through the VPC and connect locally is huge for us. And so we use an Active Directory connector, which brings over all of our Active Directory rules and regulations, all of our GPOs, and that network extension for us allowed us to be up and running in a matter of hours with all these services and not days. But the AppStream for us, especially ensuring that our users have the most current version and availability of those applications, those mission critical applications, whether it be our report writing application, whether it be our records management system, whether it be our NCIC system, our mobile system, all those, and the ability for those applications to be device agnostic is huge. And so here on the screen now you'll see just a quick diagram of how a general layout of how the network looks somewhat here at Annapolis, and this is our general layout of what we do. And so at the bottom, you'll see our dock laptops and our cruisers. all of our mobile applications, whether it be an iPad, a laptop, anything that's not physically in our system, and anything that we use, any of our desktops that are connecting to Amazon workspaces, we use two-factor authentication, and those connect in to our network. And then from our network, we then go back to the out to Amazon GovCloud, and then inside of the GovCloud in GovWest, which is where all of our products sit, inside of that VPC is Annapolis' VPC, and then within there we have a series of networking rules and regulations that govern who goes where things go, and all of those things are covered and controlled by our customer management key that ensures that no one else can access that data or do anything with it while it sits in the cloud. And that is a big, huge thing for us in ensuring that we're meeting or exceeding all the expectations for the industry. And I think that's pretty much concludes me. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Rick Truitt, Gerard, Patrick. And we've got about 4 minutes. As I think you can all see, the cloud can really enhance the security of criminal justice data, and AWS offers you as an agency, as a vendor, to build on their experience and create secure, effective, and cost-effective applications. I'm repeating here the contact information. You may want to make notes. Gerard and Patrick from Amazon, myself at CJIS Group, and Sergeant Truitt from Annapolis. And as I said at this onset of the presentation, we will have a recording of the presentation plus the slides available tomorrow at cjisgroup.com. We do have a few questions, and Patrick, Gerard, first one is, are both AWS CloudTrail and Amazon CloudWatch included in an AWS GovCloud instance, or are they add-ons? Gerard, Patrick, do you want to handle that one?
Yeah, I will. Those are individual services that you can utilize in AWS GovCloud, and you turn those services on through your AWS GovCloud console. So CloudTrail and CloudWatch are two services that are, if you look at our list of services, if you just Google, or we can send you the services in the region, CloudTrail and CloudWatch, they are included services that are available, and the various pricing for those, again, is pay as you go. Use what you need, and only then. So those are available to anyone within AWS GovCloud.
Okay. Second question, is Cognito supported in GovCloud? I don't see it on the supported product list.
I'll answer that. Cognito is on its way to GovCloud. It is not yet there. Cognito is available in our commercial regions. Cognito because Cognito handles only identity and access management information, does not handle criminal justice data per se, criminal justice information. There are ways that you could utilize it until it becomes available in GovCloud. Utilize it in the commercial region for identity and access management only, as it does not handle criminal justice data, criminal justice information, and connect that to your GovCloud account. And we can certainly help anyone who wants to do that figure out a way to do that and still be compliant to the CJIS Security Policy.
Mm-hmm. Last question we have from attendees: how does an agency handle the physical access to the data center as part of CJIS? Is that clear enough for you, Gerard or Patrick?
Yeah, I can handle that one. This is Patrick. So really, CJIS Security Policy provides you with two distinct paths, one of which is to comply with the terms of the CJIS Security Policy. You're heavily reliant on physical security. And going that route allows for, in certain instances, for data within a physical location to be stored and transmitted in an unencrypted state. With the tools that AWS provides to you and making encryption something that's scalable and easily attainable at both at rest and in transit, we actually encourage our customers to go the other route, which is to just to secure the data itself logically through the processes that we've described here with the VPC, by ensuring that your data is always protected and processed within that particular VPC. And when it's at rest or in transit anywhere in the environment, it's encrypted at that those FIPS required levels. That allows you to rely on something that's provable and something that's tangible, that you can go and run a report. You can look at your configuration of your cloud, and at a moment's notice, you can prove that at any given point in time that the data was encrypted. You can, through CloudTrail, examine when the keys were accessed, when the data was decrypted, who requested it, which service requested it. So it really gives you this provable security and allows you to retain all of the physical security that comes along with the secure design of AWS GovCloud, but you're not reliant on physical security alone to be your sole source of compliance. So you get kind of the benefit of both approaches by going the approach of just securing your data at all times throughout the life cycle, like the CJIS Security Policy intends.
Okay, we've got some last minute questions. Given there is no certification for CJIS compliance, is AWS GovCloud required for compliance? Can CJIS compliance be achieved by applying the proper controls in AWS Commercial Cloud?
So we can talk to that, and we can talk through the customer's particular use cases. In the vast majority of cases, we find that GovCloud is the right solution for the customer. But certainly, those are things that we're willing to talk to a customer about on a case-by-case basis. One of the important differentiators between GovCloud and the commercial regions is that FedRAMP High bar and authorization, but also the availability of FIPS endpoints more broadly in GovCloud. And so those are things that we would really want to talk to the customer about with the solutions architect to work through if those CJIS security policy requirements could be met in a commercial region for certain instances.
Mm-hmm. Last one, Gerard and Patrick. I hope we don't get shut off here. Does GovCloud facilitate any specific connectivity between states or federal systems, or are all connections to and from GovCloud considered unsecured internet connections other than tools to secure, such as encryption, VPN?
So there's a couple different ways that you can connect to your VPC directly from your on-prem environment. And so I think this is where the question's going. And certainly if we don't answer it adequately, I would encourage the person who asked that question to reach out to us directly. But there's a couple different ways that you can connect. You can connect using a site-to-site VPN. We also see customers connect via SSL VPN or TLS. That allows you to connect securely to the GovCloud over the internet. But we also have services like AWS Direct Connect that allows you to utilize a little bit more of a private connection into your VPC. And those can be secured a number of ways and accomplish the encryption requirements of CJIS as well. So there are multiple different ways to connect into your GovCloud VPC, and we'd be happy to talk through that with solutions architect with any customer.
Very good. There are several other questions that have been submitted. We'll be answering those offline. I'd like to thank Gerard Gallant, Patrick Wood of Amazon AWS, Sergeant Truitt from the Annapolis Police Department, and thank you all for attending this presentation. I hope you found it valuable and are ready to make your move to the cloud. Thank you. Have a great day.